The DA has joined the chorus of those calling for Defence Minister Angie Motshekga to step down. Calls are growing from Motshekga's head over the deaths of 14 South African soldiers in the eastern DRC. During the parliamentary debate this week, the DA's Chris Hattingh called for Motshekga to resign and the troops withdrawn from the region. The troops had been posted in December 2023 for a peace mission with the United Nations MONUSCO and the South African Development Community Mission in DRC. Hattingh now joins me live. Chris, appreciate your time. Now, why does the DA believe Minister Motshekga should step down and step down immediately?
Well, she's clearly not up to the task. Let's start at the beginning. She took over when we already had the troops deployed in the DRC. But then when the writing was on the wall in December, the president extended the deployment in the DRC. She must have advised the president on the situation that we find ourselves in. And it has played out now exactly like that. There were warnings in the portfolio committee, well, not only in her time, also in the previous time, in the term of Tani Modise, that we should not be there anymore. We are underfunded, under-equipped, and we cannot sustain our forces in the DRC. What we've seen now is exactly that. We are surrounded. We've got no role to play. We played a very limited role prior to us being overrun by the M23 rebels. And now we are, in effect, hostages of M23. We're not allowed to venture out of our bases without our weapons, And we've got no logistics. South Africa has got no logistical lines open to our soldiers anymore. We now have to rely on the very rebels that we fought with the FADRC for food and water. And we have not seen the leadership to stand up and to admit this to the public. We've got the right to know what the situation of our troops are in the DRC. It's not been forthcoming. So what we see here is total no understanding of the military situation in the eastern DRC, and certainly no leadership.
Chris, let's rewind a little bit. Now, you said when Angie Motshekga took over the portfolio, the troops had already travelled to the DRC. Now, in several conversations that I had, the intelligence was obviously available that we would not have the capacity to deal with the M23 rebels. So whether that information came on December 23 or came in a month ago, the writing was on the wall prior to sending the troops to the DRC. Can we start there? Shouldn't there be accountability at that point? Why did we send the troops in the first instance? Because from the information that's available, nothing's changed. It was inevitable that we would arrive at the situation we find ourselves in at the moment.
Exactly, but just remember, although the extension was signed on the day before Christmas, 24th of December, the troops were already there in terms of the previous deployment order of the Commander-in-Chief, the President. And then we must always remember that there's a continuous rotation of our troops. They stay there for a period and come back, and then other fresh troops take over. So that's been going on all along. But the facts are on the table. Unless we don't have any military intelligence, which is then if it would be, then it's another indictment against the minister and the military leadership. They should have known. They should have known up front what our situation is, and they should have known that we have a revitalized M23 rebel group, armed and equipped with modern equipment. There are even indications that they are in possession of precision-guided mortars. We should have known that, and we should have known, and the president should have been advised what the real situation is there.
So let's go back to that time where Angie Motshekga was in the DRC, which is 2 weeks before the troops succumbed to that attack from the M23 rebels. What information would have been available to her, or was available to her? I mean, what sort of intelligence would she have come up with? Because one would imagine that if she was there 2 weeks prior and the state of the SANDF is, as we understand it, that there would have been information that she would have received that would have been relayed to the president at the very least.
No, she was there right in the days when the massive build-up with the M23, the offensive of the M23 on Goma and on the airport and surroundings actually unfolded. She was there. Now, she shouldn't have been there. She should have had the information, intelligence available, what is going on and what is going to unfold. But she was right there, putting another burden on our forces to safeguard her and the generals. They didn't, if either they didn't have the intelligence or they didn't heed to it, thinking that, we've got a very good reputation of our soldiers. Our soldiers almost always pulls it off, that they will do it again. This time it didn't work. But she shouldn't have been there in the first place, and there should have been intelligence provided to her and to the general staff that they shouldn't go there during that week.
Now, Chris, as the DA defence spokesperson, I'd imagine that there's a level of intelligence that you would have around the decisions that were made or not made during that time. The impression I'm getting now is that there's a lot of supposition. There's maybes, should haves, but what actual intelligence do you have that you're going to hold against the Defence Minister and certainly against the SANDF for not acting or reacting to that intelligence?
There is you are not touching on the problem of the Standing Committee on Defence, also on the Joint Standing Committee on Defence. The Portfolio Committee on the one side and the Joint Standing Committee on the other side is the lack of information, the veil of secrecy that's over everything. Hiding behind the sensitivity of the operational security and the reluctance to answer even a basic question, such as the following. Do we have logistical lines open to our soldiers? There is no answer to that. In the committee, the minister just sat there and the chief SANDF just sat there and they didn't respond to the question. So we would have thought that at least there would have been some openness about some crucial issues like that, but it appears that hiding the embarrassment that we find ourselves in at this stage is more important, and creating this scenario that everything is well and good with our troops, that image must be kept up. But it's not so. We are in a desperate situation. We find ourselves that whenever we would make any other military move as South Africa in the DRC, we've got hundreds of soldiers there that are exposed and surrounded by M23 rebel groups supported by Rwanda. They are in really a desperate situation. And perhaps the president should actually now take command as commander-in-chief and have one of these my fellow South African TV appearances and explain to the nation what is going on in the DRC and explain our predicament and how we're going to get out of that if there's any plan.
Now, Chris, beyond the minister's resignation, which you're calling for, what steps do you think should be taken to ensure accountability in this crisis?
Well, there must be accountability. Obviously, before you can get accountability, there must be some information must come forward. An inquiry into the situation, yes, that certainly must be. But at this very moment, we now need to focus on how do we get our injured soldiers out of the DRC? How do we get our soldiers still in the fight, although not fighting anymore, out of the DRC? And then, well, a big question mark hangs over that. Will we be able to get our equipment out of the DRC, or will M23 just say, thank you very much, we will take it from here?
Final thoughts before we let you go, Chris. The decision that was arrived at to go in and support the DRC, should more work or care be taken in committing SANDF troops to various missions across the continent?
Our troops are excellent. We've got very good troops, and they get excellent training. Although it's also being a bit impeded with budget cuts, we've seen that. But you see, there's a situation. We've always been doing this, and most of the time we've pulled it off. So there's a lot of trust in our troops and our ability. The reality is, it is not there. We are on the decline. We do not have the equipment. We don't modernize. We don't maintain our equipment. We don't preserve our equipment that should be in preservation. Everything is going south at this stage. And there must be accountability, not only for the DRC fiasco, but for the state of the SANDF. Yes, we can all say it's a budget process, but you have to cut your coat to the size of the cloth. You can't continue with business as usual when you know you do not have the resources to sustain that. And there need to be some accountability for that as well.
Chris Hattingh, DA Defence spokesperson, thanks for your time speaking to us around calls by the DA for Defence Minister Angie Motshekga to step down, and also calls for accountability around that debacle in the DRC.